Today we're going to talk about space, negative space, and how we are going to use that to create depth in our sketch. We've already talked generally about the element of space in this video. We've spoken about how we can use different planes of foreground, midground, and background to create depth in our sketch. We've also spoken about stacking of shapes in this video to talk about how you can create a sense of depth. Sometimes that includes lines, leading lines. But today, we will learn to see how we can use negative space. It starts with observation, and from there, we will be able to apply it to our sketch. Let's go. So let's talk about this photograph where if you see the lady, we're gonna draw it positively. This is what the beginners will usually do. Draw the hair, and then maybe even sort of draw the face, the hand, the clothes, and so on and so forth, right? That's really all about positive shape and positive drawing. You're looking at it from the object itself, or the person in this case, and you are looking at the shape that is obvious, immediate, in front of you. But what if you were to look at it negatively? In other words, you're looking at the shape behind the face or the silhouette of the person, and you are looking at how those shapes stacked up. One of the best way of creating depth is actually dedicating yourself to looking at things negatively, the in between the shapes or the background and so on and so forth. That you realize once you start to do the negative shape, your sketch will get so much better. This is one of the most important lessons for beginners. Okay, what about another example, a coffee mug, which is always a favorite of mine when illustrating this concept. You can draw it positively as you would. Normally, you draw the outline of the coffee mug, you're looking at it from a positive shape perspective, the outline, the contour of the coffee, and then the coffee itself, and you might even put some values to it and differentiate it, and that's the typical way of drawing, right? So let's try to do this negatively and see what happens. Well, you will draw the outside of the mug. You would look at the shape behind and made some abstraction to it. In this case, I made a diagonal parallel lines outside of the handle of the mug. I decided to also sketch in the coffee and maybe also the inside of the handle, and then maybe a bit of a shadow on the bottom of the right. Part of it is positive lines, but you could just basically shade the side of it, and because you can, as you can see, the mug is taking shape, and by sketching out a bit more on the left, a bit more on the right, shading it, you would see that the mug will appear even though it is not really there in you didn't quite draw it like positively, right? But this is how you would be shading your negative space, if you like, and making shapes out of your sketch. Okay, let's sketch this simple photograph, a lady in an umbrella and some shapes at the back. We're just gonna keep it very simple. First, we outline it, and of course, by outlining the positive shape and then coloring the sort of negative shape, it's also an easy approach for beginners to take. You don't always have to color and draw negative shape completely because it may be too much of a jump and a stretch. Okay, so as you can see, I'm not being very precise. I'm just trying to be, I'm just trying to capture the broad shape. In this case, the negative shape of the person, the figure underneath the umbrella. There is some dark lines, or if you like, vertical bars on the right hand side. I purposely slant the horizon, or the street line a little bit more than I see, because like I said in one of my earlier videos, the slanted lines are a lot more energetic and dynamic. You always want to contrast that against a vertical or perpendicular line, as in this case, the perpendicular bars on the right hand side. So that would just sort of give a sense of depth, because now your eyes will see the umbrella being way in front of the bars. The bar is way at the back, And that is a sense that you're trying to create with a negative shape. The negative shape really is the ability for eyes to see, incomplete parts. The incomplete parts will itself create a kind of a distance, if you like. As you know, it is very difficult to create 3D in a 2D piece of paper. The 2D piece of paper is just 2D, but you need to create a sense as an artist, the sense of depth and so on. I've already spoken. This is one of the easier way, overlapping shapes and the planes. But now we're using negative shape. You see it once I color it, that it will give you the sense of depth that we are so desiring. Okay, so let's start sketching the bars to start. From a value perspective, and I'll have another video on the elements of value, but for now it's good enough to say that in the value system of 1 to 5, I'm trying to achieve a 4 or a 5, and maybe I'll use a 1 and 2. That's it, right? Keep it simple, keep it straightforward. I also go in very, very dark with permanent alizarin crimson and phthalo green, and those two combined gives you a rich sort of a gray tone, but it's rich because it is consisting of two complementary colors, and they will give you a very, very nice black if you like, but you're not going for black, you're going for interesting dark. So as you can see, the darks, the bars on the right, and then the figures on underneath the umbrella, those in itself will try to make it sort of pop, if you like, three-dimensional. It gives you a sense of depth, and slowly you see that actually this is the rhythm and bass of a sketch. Values, really, you don't really need much if you can handle your values correctly. I continue to put in some interesting purple. That would be Cabozel Violet. By the way, these are all Daniel Smith colors, and I do love the Daniel Smith reached colors, pigments, and I make the sort of dark interesting, if you like, by varying the sort of colors and the pigments I use. Now, a bit more green because it's tree, right? But don't get carried away with green. It is not just green. I drop in a bit of red in it, a bit of purple in it, and make it sort of very, very interesting and rich. But all I'm thinking about at this point is value. 4, 5, much darker than the paper white, if you like. And in itself, that is just the idea. As you can see, the shapes that's overlap created by the negative shape on top, and in this case, it is the positive shape of the tree. But the positive shape of the tree is shaping the negative shape of the umbrella. Now, as our umbrella is the main focus area at this point, in other words, it is the main character, the main protagonist, if you like, of the sketch. I think you just need to think in terms of the light and dark contrast. By playing with the contrast, you are stacking the shape. You are actually using stacking shape, and it's also creating a negative shape to the umbrella. As you can see, the sketch is sort of moving along really nicely. And before long you will know it's sort of done. So as we continue with the sketch, you see that I try to create a sense of front and back, again stacking of the shape, and also using negative shape around the pole in front. The pole in front is sort of to contrast the vertical bars at the back. It exists in the photograph, but I'm using it as an element of design to create that sort of interest, if you like. A bit of shadow, a bit of interest shapes. You will see that I used values of maybe 1 and 2 to buffer the jump from 1 to 5, if you like, or 1 to 4. It's a bit of a great leap. So I try to buffer the value change by having maybe a bit of 1, 2 in between 1 and 5. I put in a sort of a 2, and I gradate it sometimes with soft edges, with watering down, washing away the edges, and so on. Occasionally you can see that even though I have a 4, value 4 in the figures, I try to put in a bit more to darken some part of it, to maybe indicate one of the leg is behind, it's in shadows, or underneath the chin or neck where there's a bit of a shadow, and that just create a bit more interest. Now you see that I put a bit of lines behind. Those lines I carry all right through from the small figures to the main figures and all the way to the right. And why do I do that? Well, it creates against this sense of depth. The broken lines, when you are stacking the lines and stacking the shape, will create that sort of, three-dimensional sense, if you like. Again, they are negative shapes in the sense that the negative shape creates, or wrap around the main figures and shape. The main shape is positive, so all these side, lines and stuff are negative. So that really creates a very interesting sort of pop, if you like, to the whole sketch. As you can see, it is forming shape nicely. The umbrella is coming out in shape, and I give it a bit more values, a bit more darker values to the bars, the vertical bars, and so on and so forth. And pretty much, I don't really want to do more. It is a demo after all. It's not, you can be out there and sketching. This doesn't take you a lot. It's like maybe 10 minutes to do this, and you could really just see it in the shape. Well, make sure the shapes are readable. In other words, the audience can see what it is. It's an umbrella, it's a figure, it's a tree, it's a bar, and so on and so forth. It's a shadow, and therefore you don't really have to do much more, right? In that sense, because the eyes can see what they are. So at this point, I'm evaluating the sketch. I'm thinking, what should I be doing next? Well, I intend to put in a value 2 somewhere to buffer the change from 1 to 5. It's a bit too much, so I draw a bit of with very, very light, the lightest watercolor value you can get away with. Your eyes can see it for sure because paper white is white, and so any sort of diluted color will just pop up as a 1.5, 2 value out of 5, and and then that sort of buffer. Oops, that's a bit of a spread, but it's okay. That's the beauty of watercolor, right? Mistakes are to be loved and accepted, because who's perfect, right? So in this case, just keep going and you realize that your sketch is done. I hope you enjoyed this, and like I said, don't get too stressed out over sketch, because after all, it is a sketch. Have a good day wherever you are. Bye.